CEO of your Wilmington Chamber of Commerce, and we are so glad that you've joined us today for our annual Women's Professional Development event. I'm sorry we can't all be together to enjoy a lunch like we have in the past, but I'm really glad that you're all here to learn from some great women in our community about how to handle difficult conversations about money, mental health, and race. It can mean the difference between building a relationship or putting a barrier between you and someone else. And so I'm excited to introduce to you our guests, and I'll do that in a moment. But first, without any further ado, I have to thank our sponsors, because without our sponsors, we can't put events on in person or virtually. And those events and the revenue that they generate help to operate the Chamber too, and allow us to be the business advocate in Southeastern North Carolina. And so to thank those sponsors, I'll start. Our presenting sponsor today is First National Bank. We have the Inspiration Lab, GE Aviation, the Greater Wilmington Business Journal, and Star News as our sponsors. And one of our sponsors, our presenting sponsor, has joined us today. Spence Broadhurst is with us to provide a sponsor welcome to all of you. Spence?
Well, thank you, Natalie. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor on behalf of First National Bank and me personally to be a partner and a sponsor in this event. I mean, it's just so important, and I want to thank the Chamber for the leadership that they've been providing through all the challenges of the pandemic and the challenges we're all facing with the social injustice that's been in front of us. And I think as we move forward, I think we all know, everybody on this call knows that social injustice goes beyond race, and it's gone into gender for years and years and years. And as you can see, though, on this, from the presenters and the leaders we have on this call, it's a different day here in New Hanover County and in Wilmington and the greater area, with these three leaders that you'll hear from today. And also, congratulations to the Wilmington Business Development for electing the first female chairman, Sabrina Sells, to their board. And also, as you know, our county commissioners for the first time in history, has the females as both chair and vice chair. So it's a new day and it's exciting. And together we're better. And I think y'all probably heard that slogan a little bit recently. And I'm going to change my hat real quick, Natalie, if you give me 2 seconds. And I want to thank the Chamber and everybody that has really been supportive of the process of the Partnership Advisory Group as we dealt with the future of New Hanover Regional Medical Center. And we encourage everybody to get involved from now on through when the final vote is taken by our county commissioners later this year. And we're going to provide several forums. I believe August 18th, September 1st, September 15th. We'll be live on Facebook. You can go to, let me get the website right, nhrmcfuture.org. I believe it has all the information on that. So thank you to Chamber for supporting our process, and thank you for putting this on. It's important, and we're honored to be a part of it.
Spence, thank you. And thank you again for the support and the investment that First National Bank makes for the Chamber. We couldn't do the work that we do on behalf of our community without investments like yours and those of so many other companies in our community. And those partnerships are very important for us. So today, we're probably going to get a little bit vulnerable, and we encourage those of you in the audience to also let yourself feel a little bit of vulnerability and listen for those tools and the unique ways that you might be able to approach people on either of these three topics that that are really top of mind these days. I have to share from my own personal perspective that this year, like many of you, has been really hard for me. I'm a people person. So this isolation's been hard. We have, a membership organization that's made up of a lot of small businesses. And so I had some anxiety early on in the pandemic about how the Chamber would get through the issues surrounding our small business members. And I have aging parents that I'm taking care of. My father and my stepmother recently moved to town, so I'm dealing with that. I have a 16-year-old son who's going to be driving by himself effective Friday, and the fear that comes with that. And then I lost my mother on the day that Governor Cooper announced we would be shutting down the state. And so these last few months have been really hard for me. And so I had to lean on some friends and lean on some family members. And I really had to ask myself some tough questions, and which led to some hard conversations. But I'm really grateful that I had some resources to turn to. And my primary care physician is amazing. All I had to do was mention all of these things. And he said, and oh, Natalie, by the way, you have this job too, right? And so, and he's right. And so he walked me through some resources and shared some things with me. And I'm feeling like I'm handling things better. And then of course I spend 2 or 3 days at home alone and feel really lonely again. And so, so it sort of came to the staff at the chamber that there may be others facing some hard situations right now and needing to have some tough conversations. You know, I have a lot of friends who are Black and I care deeply for, and we started an African American Business Council at the chamber 2.5 years ago. I care deeply for those people and the people that they are trying to represent to help grow African American businesses in our community. And so I just want to be sure that wherever the chamber can be a source of a resource, we want to do that, and whatever it is. And right now, having hard conversations is something we all need to be able to do. So I am thrilled to introduce to you our panelists, and then each of them is going to talk for a little bit about who they are, what they do, and then they will share with you. We'll start to have a conversation. I want to encourage you all to use the Q&A feature to ask your questions, not the chat feature in Zoom. If you use the Q&A feature, you can make yourself anonymous so that no one knows who's asking the question. And so if you have a hard question to ask right now and you're not ready for the rest of us to know who you are, that is okay. We encourage you to maintain that anonymity. And so I will introduce you in alphabetical order. Velva Jenkins is the Chief Executive Officer of the YWCA of the Lower Cape Fear. And I got to meet her early on in my time in Wilmington because she used to run the economic development activities and things at Brunswick Community College. And she was a great resource for me in Brunswick County because she's a native, as well as all things business oriented in Brunswick County. Velva, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'd also like to, sure, you're welcome. I'd like to introduce Sandy Spears, who's a Senior Vice President and Middle Market Banker for SunTrust, now Truist. And Sandy's been a great resource for me as well. She's been here quite a few years and has some connections, and she's never shy about helping me find the answers or the people that I've needed to find since I've been in Wilmington. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us. And finally, Dr. Laura Picaldo, who I've not yet met in person, but have heard a lot of wonderful things about Dr. Laura. Dr. Picaldo, she's with New Hanover Regional Medical Center in the psychiatry department. She's actually the psychiatry department chair at the hospital. And we're fortunate to have her expertise and her wisdom leading that department in our hospital system. And really grateful, Dr. Laura, for having you here with us today. So Velva, let's kick it off with you. If you would just share with us sort of your background, what you're doing currently at the Y, and why then you stand out for me as a resource to talk about how to have hard conversations today.
Okay, thank you, Natalie, and thank you, audience, for being with us today. As Natalie said, I am a native of Brunswick County, so the Lower Cape Fear is not any type of place that I'm not familiar with. I'm very familiar with the area, with all the counties surrounding us. But I had a great career as in education with Brunswick Community College. Started there in 1986 as the Small Business Center Director. At that time, it was called Brunswick Technical College. So I have seen a lot of things evolve at Brunswick Community College, seen a lot of things grow, but my heart and my passion has always been with the vulnerable community. And that's why my career has been safely planted in continuing education. Work very hard in continuing education and working with small businesses, those that wanted to be business owners, and those who already started businesses and wanted to know how they could develop, grow, and be a stable force in our economy. And after so many years doing that, I spread my knowledge and my help with working with not just small businesses, but all businesses in Brunswick County. So I work with economic development and bringing more businesses in the area, and also making sure that the workforce talent meet their needs, and that they were able to find good workforce or employees to be able to fill the jobs that they were looking to fill. So saying all of that is to say that as a woman, I have truly worked with so many women that may not have had the skill set or even the confidence in doing some of the things that they were so much capable of doing. And that's working with them with education or finding that support mechanism that will help them take that first step forward. Well, after 32 years, I felt like it was time for me to leave Brunswick Community College. After all, I put in my time, so why not? So I decided to retire in December of 2018. And when I retired, it wasn't a retirement of going home, sitting on the back porch, which I have a very beautiful scene, and drink coffee or cold tea. I felt like it was time for me to do something else. How can I help others? How can I reach out and assist others? And when I retired, I had plenty of time to walk, enjoy my community. And as I was walking one day, I was praying and I said, Lord, send me that opportunity to help others. And then I started getting calls from small business, small nonprofits saying, Velva, we know you're retired. We know that you can probably help us in some way. Would you work with us? And it was like an answer to my prayers. And I was so excited. And then after a while, we lost a great leader here at the YWCA of the Lower Cape here, Sharice Hart. She was the CEO at that time, and she decided to move back to Greensboro. And as being a board member, they asked me to step in as the interim. And what a dream come true, working with a bunch of beautiful women here in the Lower Cape here, empowering them to do what they need to do, and what they want to do, and what they were afraid to do, but giving them the strength, the knowledge, and also the resources and mechanisms to be able to move forward. So I think, Natalie, that kind of sets the stage of who I am and what I do. I would like to say that I have a family that supports me wonderfully. And that's two beautiful girls and a wonderful husband. And without them, I could not do the things that I do.
Velva, thank you so much. I'm certain that no one in our webinar today is questioning why, one, your passion for what you do and the why you do it, and certainly why we invited you to be with us today. So we're looking forward to more conversation with you throughout the event. Dr. Picaldo, if you could share with our audience a little bit more about who you are and some experiences that you'd like to share.
I'm glad to be here, and thank you everyone of our participants for being here too. So I am originally from East Tennessee. I came into North Carolina to train in residency. I did a 5-year internal medicine and psychiatry residency in Greenville, and then I have been here in Wilmington for 9 years this month. So it's been a wonderful 9 years. I have learned a lot about the mental health system and the healthcare system here in the area, and helping our patients and our community figure out how to navigate that system is very important to me. So it's the big reason I'm happy to be here, you know, and it's so important that we feel comfortable talking about mental health. It impacts many of us. Almost 10% of the population is struggling in some way with a form of depression. It affects our health, our families, our relationships, our work, our businesses, and our faith, our churches, and our communities. So anyway, it's exciting to be here.
Well, thank you very much. Sandy.
Hi, so I'm Sandy Spears, and I too want to thank everybody for being here, and Natalie, thank you for this opportunity. I've been here for 20 years. Those of you who have heard me speak before, I'm very proud of my Louisiana heritage. My husband and I moved here 20 years ago coming from Louisiana with middle school children, and we made this place home. Those of you who have heard me speak before always hear me talk about Henry, and so you you'll see I'm in my husband's office. Everybody else has these professional looking offices. I'm in my husband's office, and you can see he likes Henry too. Pictures, but working from home, it's been nice to be surrounded by him. But in my 20 years while in Wilmington, and before that, I remember my first job. I was teaching some elderly women about finance, and then my next about some of them thought if they still had a check, they still had money in their account, and preparing them for when or if their husband passed before them, that they would be ready to help. I think that was the beginning of my having conversations about money with people, and then teaching women about buying homes. Since working with SunTrust, now Truist, we've done a lot of working in Step Up, in Dreams, and just really I enjoy working with people and helping them understand more about money. Talking about money is kind of like going to the dentist. Nobody wants to do that, but if you don't go, if you don't have that conversation, bad things happen. If there are any dentists out there, so I guess what I'll say, so you need to have those conversations. If there's any dentists out there, that was a little bit of a diss, but it was also a commercial. So, talking about money, you need to do this. Going to the dentist, you need to do this. But money conversations are just really, really difficult. But research shows that is the largest predictor of divorce or separation is money. So with that being said, having those conversations and being prepared to have those conversations is just really important. And so it's something that I believe in and have always tried to go out into our community and work with people about that. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandy. You guys, I know the audience is very pleased already knowing the caliber of speakers we have with us today. I'm already seeing a question or two pop up in our Q&A, but before we go there, ladies, we talked about this on our prep call, that if we get a little vulnerable, that the audience might feel comfortable really asking hard questions today, because no question is a dumb question, and we don't want anyone to leave today feeling like they didn't get a resource that they thought they might get. So we want to make sure everyone feels comfortable. So I'm going to ask each of you to get a little bit vulnerable, and we'll go backwards. Sandy, we're going to start with you. So you keep thinking while you're thinking about what you're going to share. I also, for those of you who were able to swing by the chamber to pick up your gift bags, please feel free to pop open that bottle of wine or that bag of popcorn and snack away. And don't forget to enjoy the coupons and discount codes and things that some of our spa members have shared with us. And I think a dentist even gave little packages with toothpaste and toothbrush. I'm pretty sure, but and I just got back from the dentist, and it's actually one of my favorite things to do, because I love clean teeth. So I love the way they feel. But so Sandy, would you like to share with us a story about a time when you were vulnerable and needed to ask some hard questions or have some hard conversations?
Yeah, well, I think I could probably share something in every category. And those of you who know me know that I probably would, because if you meet me, I tell you more about me than you ever wanted to know about me. Usually people have to tell me to shut up. So, but I figured instead of talking about money, which is kind of what I'm kind of here for, I would talk a little bit about depression or mental health. My father died from esophageal cancer. I had 2 small children at the time. And even though it was a long time coming, it was when Daddy did pass, I went into a pretty good depression. I went to work. I did fine at work, or I think I did fine at work. Nobody complained, but I functioned at work just fine. But when I went home, I really didn't. I went into my room. This will kind of date this. I listened to Garth Brooks' song, The Last Dance. I won't sing it. My family would tell you don't want me to sing this. My husband's in a band, but I am not in charge of singing in the band. And the lyrics that made me think about it all the time was when he says that you could not, all of a sudden I can't remember, I could have missed the pain, but then I would have missed the dance. So that just kept hitting me. So I would go home and I would listen to this song over and over. My children would come into the room and they would Lindsay would clean, and Addison would draw pictures, and my husband would cook. And so finally, just like you did, Natalie, I talked to my doctor about it, and I sought some help. And that I knew that I had this small young family, and I had to get over this, and they helped me through that process. I knew I needed help. I got the help, and I just want to tell everybody, whether you need help with mental health, diversity issues, or if it's financial, don't be afraid and don't be ashamed of asking for it, because we all need help sometimes.
Absolutely.
So that was
Thank you so much, Sandy, for sharing that. But those lyrics are going to stick with me, having lost my mother earlier this year.
Like the song in the background while I was talking, but then I would possibly cry, so we probably didn't want to do that.
Oh, Dr. Picaldo, how about you?
Sure. First, Natalie and Sandy, I think it is so remarkable that you brought these things up with your physicians, because one thing that I notice is that we as healthcare providers don't ask enough. Often, I think that's getting better. Even I really struggled personally with anxiety, significant anxiety after the births of my children. And I had to reach out to my OB, but there were times that I wish someone had just asked, because it is so common and so prevalent and so treatable that I just wish someone had asked me. And they would ask a few things, but not in general. So we do have to reach out, and you guys had excellent results from that. And it's so important for us to take that sometimes into our own hands if it's not offered. But I can speak a little bit about some of the struggles I'm having with race and at work. It is so challenging right now to figure out how to support our patients and our staff members entirely as they struggle right now. And these conversations are hard. They're hard in the mental health setting because our Black patients they're afraid, they're motivated, they don't know where to put this energy sometimes. And trying to figure out, for me, how to help people through that is really difficult right now. So I'm looking forward to learning more about how to have those conversations and support our members in the community and our patients through this.
Thank you, Laura, for sharing that. So, Belva?
I'm glad that, Laura, you said that, what you said about Black patients and so forth. Let me just tell a little bit about some things that I have gone through in my life. During the very peak of my career at Brunswick Community College, my mother started to age. As a matter of fact, she lived until she was 100 years old, and she died in 2015. And I was her primary caregiver while working full time. It was not easy, but I kept being as strong as I could be. And one of the things I regret after looking back after this is that I did not ask for help, that I did not find someone that I could confide in and talk to. I kept on being that superwoman that I thought I could be. And then when I lost her, when she passed away, it all came down on me. And so my thing is that if I had to do anything all over again, I would only change one thing, and that is to talk to someone and ask for help.
Wow. Thank you so much, Belva. That's meaningful. So, one of the first question that has popped up in our Q&A, and I want to remind the audience, use the Q&A function for your questions, but then feel free. I've seen that some folks are chatting, thanking us for the bags. Megan has also posted for you all a poll on talking about mental health. So you attendees will have a discussion about those results a little bit later on. But the question, Belva, in our Q&A is for you specifically. Someone wants to know, what are some of the programs at the YWCA that address many of the issues the world is dealing with now, and how can the community help?
Okay, that's a great question. As you know, that the YWCA, our mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. And that is part of the focus that we're talking about today, is the race relations and also women. And the programs that we have to address the racial injustices and the racial, what I call racial education, is that we have several programs. We have a program that we offer annually in April, and it's called Stand Against Racism. And it's the opportunity that we get together with the community. We come up with a statewide or national-wide topic that we center around and we advocate for, and we come together at some type of programming that we come together and put together. And this is through community outreach and also community committees. And so that was one of the questions: how can you help? Join a committee at the YWCA for Racial Advocacy. The other program that we offer that has been very, very great program is for children. It's What's Wrong with Different. We go into the classroom of second and third graders, and at that particular time, we work with them on learning what is different about others. That is it okay? Is it okay to be different? Is it okay to look different, and how we deal with those? So it's a 45-minute program that we work with, and we go into the community, all the schools, and we've done almost every school in New Hanover County. The other program that we have that's been a great program are two new programs that we just offer for advocacy and racial justice. And one is a 21-day challenge. We launched that on June 19th. Now, that doesn't mean that it's over and done with. No, it is still available for anyone. And you work at your own pace. It's an awesome program. The program addresses things like racial injustices, leadership, white fragility. The other things is what makes the community different, what's happening in our community. And you get podcasts and videos and reading materials that help you understand the makeup of our community. The other program that we offer on the first Tuesday every month is called Talk on Race. This is actually right now a virtual program that we offer, and our facilitator is Janiqua Palmer. And Janiqua puts together a panel of speakers like we are here today, virtually, and they talk about different race topics that are impacting our community. And then we also have the Potluck for Peace. Potluck for Peace has been going on for several years now, and we do that every quarter. And it is a in the past, it's been a forum that we do face-to-face, and we make it a fellowship because everyone bring a covered dish, and you can never have an event that is more enlightening when you've got food involved. And then we talk about some difficult topics. So those are the things that we got going on right now for our advocacy and racial justice. And for empowering women, talking about money, security, self-sufficiency, self-resilience, we have New Choices. And that is an awesome program that take women that have gone through domestic violence, that have gone through a job loss, that have maybe had a death of a spouse and need support to be able to understand how they can stand and be self-sufficient on their own. Mm-hmm. These programs are very true and meaningful, and they're free to our people in our communities.
Thank you, Velva. I know that was really helpful for folks. And it's YWCA.
YWCA, the Laura K. Fair.
And the website?
Yes. Oh, the website. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The YWCA, laurakfair.org.
Great. So encourage folks to visit the YWCA's website there. Sandy, this next one, I'm going to start with you, but Laura and Velva, if you feel moved to also answer, because it sort of starts it's a little bit about money, but it's a little bit broader from a female perspective about how do you have difficult conversations in the workplace, like discussing a raise or a change in your role or leadership opportunity. And if you have any experiences to share, I suspect we all have some that we could share. But Sandy, you and I have actually talked about this topic specifically in the past. So I'd love to start with you if you don't mind.
I think women, we don't really give ourselves the right to talk about things sometimes. We especially if our supervisor or our boss is a man, we feel like we have to act a certain way. And I think I mentioned this on our call the other day. I actually had I have a mentee through Wilma, and she was thinking she wanted to find out what the company had in plans for her, and was asking me, you know, I have my review coming up. Is this the right time to do this? And I was like, very much. You know, you have the right to say, you know, what is my role with this company? I want to grow with this company. What is the way this is going to happen? And I think women, and especially young women, lack some of that self-confidence that we need to have to say, well, kind of like what I said when we started, we were all on here beforehand, everybody. And I told them that once we get finished with this, if Oprah got wind of this, she was going to want us to all to be on it. And I'm really not that self-confident. I was kind of, but women truly do lack that self-confidence that they should have to have those hard conversations, you know, with their boss. I had my review this past week, and there were some questions I had, and they were hard questions. And my boss appreciated the fact that I would ask those hard questions. So my advice would be to believe in yourself, to have the self-confidence. If you feel like you want to practice, find an older woman or a younger woman or somebody and say, this is how I want to say it. And have that conversation with yourself. One of my things that I talk about when the 6 different people that you need to have a money conversation with, one of those is have the conversation with yourself about money, but really have that conversation with yourself about, you know, what is my worth here? What do I bring to the table? And know what your worth is and what it is you're bringing to the table. And don't wait for somebody to pat you on the back about what your worth is. Be willing, and you're not cocky. Be willing to tell people, this is what I do good, and this is what I'm worth. You can do it in a way that doesn't sound narcissistic. And I'm not trying to be narcissistic. I just think you're your best cheerleader, and you need to believe in yourself. I don't know if that kind of answered the question.
Yeah, no, I do like that. Laura or Velva, do either of you have, it looks like Laura's reaching to unmute. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to express what your goals are for the organization and how you think you can continue to grow certain projects, save money, and discuss some of the things you've been successful with in the past, and find a mentor to have maybe some of those role playing or to bounce ideas off of, and to get some recommendations about how exactly to present that to your boss. He or she might have been in that same situation in the past. So just that.
Yep, Velva, anything? You're on mute. Yeah. There you go.
You know, I think the ladies are correct. Sandy and Laura, they had some very good suggestions. The only other thing is that you have to have confidence in yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have confidence in yourself, it's going to show either by your actions, how you speak, but you've got to build that confidence, and you've got to address your boss right on and let him know, or let her know, how you feel and where you want to go in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Be confident. Be confident.
Yes. Absolutely. I would expand on Sandy's suggestion, to practice with someone. Consider finding a man that you really, if your supervisor is a man, consider finding a man who's a good friend or a mentor type for you, and test your conversation on him. We are different. Men and women are different. It's men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Although I have to tell you guys, a good friend of mine once said to me that her husband was from Venus and that I was from Mars, and so she decided that I would be her husband and her husband would be her wife. So but yeah, I've practiced on men before going to my male boss to advocate for myself. So those are great responses. Thank you guys. So Dr. Laura, we're going to start with you on this next one, of course, but I encourage anyone else to weigh in as well. Somebody's asking if there are Zoom-based resources for women to come together, walk through grief around loss of family members, miscarriages, abortions, things like that.
There are, and I'm sorry, I do not know the names of them right off the top of my head, but there absolutely are. And even if they're not Zoom, there are online support communities, especially regarding loss of pregnancies. I have been through that personally. Over 30% of women have. So you will find out that that community of women is actually quite large in that regard specifically. In terms of grief of other family members, I don't specifically know, but I imagine there are. One positive, if we can say there are some positive things that have come out of COVID-19, is that there are more online resources for mental health care. And most of the therapy offices here in town, the mental health offices, are seeing patients online and through Zoom. So I can provide a couple of those resources after the call.
I was going to
Super.
say, as far as grief with a family member, Lower Cape Fear Hospice or Lower Cape Fear Life Care, sorry. In my work with them in the past, they have, and I don't have the resources on me, but if you go to their website, they have resources for both children and parents. And I don't think you have to have been with them to be able to participate in these programs. And somebody out there may know the answer to that. But I do know they have a lot of programs for both children and adults that have lost a loved one.
Sure, and I would also add one of our sponsors is the Inspiration Lab, started by Stephanie Lanier in our community, and they have a lot of resources for women and a lot of groups, and they're doing everything on Zoom right now. And so if only to connect with other women in our community, that is an avenue to do that. Certainly the Wilma Leadership Program through the Business Journal is another way to connect with a group of women, but the Inspiration Lab is putting on some very inspirational programming, and I haven't seen one specifically based on grief, but a lot based on self-care, which I think is an important way to handle grief and anxiety and things like that. So anybody else have anything they wanted to add on that? I didn't see anybody ready to speak. So our next question from our audience is, how does one deal with racism in the workplace when it seems to be swept under the rug and is turned back on you? Melba, you have any thoughts you want to share?
That is a good question. I don't have that problem here at the YWCA. I'm trying to think, how can I would handle it like I would handle any tough conversation on race. And that you have to speak up. You have to let your voice being heard. Don't let it be swept under the rug. If you see it being swept under the rug, speak out. Let those that are involved know that it's not the right thing to do, and that you understand that there is some misunderstanding in the workplace. May it be a promotion, may it be raises, may it be equity in pay, but you have to speak out. You have to bring it to their attention. And I have experienced that. I've been around for a long time, and 32 years at one place, of course, and especially more so men being paid more than women. It's been more the unequitable thing that I have experienced at Brunswick Community College, but address it head on. Don't let it be swept under the rug. It may not change overnight, but you keep speaking up.
That's great encouragement, Bella. Anything anyone else would want to add?
I'll add something. I have the worst rose-colored glasses probably on the planet, and always look for the silver lining in everything. And I know what you're experiencing and what Velva talked about. You know, women have experienced in the workplace in the past. Luckily, at where I work and where I've been working at the whole 20 years I've been here at RBC, at SunTrust, and now at Truist, I don't have those issues, and I'm sorry that you do have those problems. But I do think that a change is coming. I do believe that we will see a change. And just like Velva said, I think that you have to speak out. You have to, even though it's scary and it's hard. I think you might be surprised at who at your work feels the same way you feel and will speak out with you. and hopefully in what hopefully is a new world that we're all moving into, then it won't be swept under the rug anymore. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's strength in numbers, certainly. Laura, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I had two things I wanted to say. Is one, that if it's possible to maybe find allies, even if they are not of the same race, I think that's one thing. The other is try to become a leader if that is possible. There may be systemic racism that is keeping that from happening, but to try to move up into leadership to help make these changes actually occur. But in terms of finding allies in your workplace, I will never forget an occurrence I had years ago with a colleague. She was a nurse working with us. We were seeing a patient in the emergency room. He was psychotic. He was large. He was Black. He was not dangerous. Many of us thought he might be. And that nurse knew him very well. And she said she was upset, but she was humble and she was confident. And she said, I am afraid people are perceiving him as dangerous because he's Black. I will never forget that. And it absolutely changed the way that we were interacting with that patient. So don't be, you never know who you're going to influence when you speak up, even in those moments, those brief statements that you might make in those circumstances.
That's meaningful. Thank you for sharing that experience too, because I think we have all been in a situation where, and it isn't, you're right, Velva, you mentioned this early on today, that it also, and women are impacted similarly and have been. In fact, the right to vote was given to Black men before it was given to any women, and not that erases anything, certainly, but it's sort of a similar thing. We walk by and maybe we hear a man say something about a woman that they're looking at that's totally inappropriate in the workplace, and we should call them out. We should embarrass those men for doing that. We should embarrass anybody for making assumptions based on race, if that's what it takes to get people to stop doing things, because I think that we've allowed, as a society, have allowed it to go on so long that we almost just ignore it, and that's not helpful. We really do need to give people that. And so that leads into this next question that, and I'm jumping around, so audience, don't be disappointed if I haven't asked your question. I'm going to try to get to all of them, but when something comes up that makes one seem good, and Megan has put up a poll for you guys on race, and so if you wouldn't mind answering that poll now. But so this next one is, what is the best way for a manager to open a dialogue with an African-American employee about how they are doing in the workplace as it relates to inclusivity? Does that make sense? Velva, you have any thoughts on that one to start us off?
Could you repeat that, Natalie, please?
I will. What is the best way for a manager to open a dialogue with an African-American employee about how they are doing in the workplace? And then there's a phrase, as it relates to inclusivity. And so I'm going to try to interpret this question a little bit, maybe. Yeah. And maybe it's, certainly there is an onus on white people to be more open and understanding that while we are different, it doesn't mean we are better. If I had an African-American employee on the chamber staff and I wanted to talk to them about participating in that inclusivity, I will say, I've been in groups before, and it seems like when you get in a group, everybody who's like tends to go to, it's like the middle school dance, right? The girls were on one side and the boys were on the other. I've been in many professional settings before where all the white people sit together and all the Black people sit together. And so how do you approach African Americans to encourage them to help us with inclusivity in settings like that?
Well, I don't think I'm a little bit confused about definitely the question, but let me see if I can address it this way, Natalie. Number one, you're already making a difference, identifying a difference. black, white. You've got to include people and as employees. And you've got to make a person feel comfortable in being a part. That conversation shouldn't have to be if that person has already been included and made felt a part of the organization. Now, if it's the other way around, if they feel like the blacks are not including the whites in their whatever it is, same thing. You've got to make people feel comfortable, and offer them that option of wanting to be a part. I just don't get that.
Okay.
I really don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sure. Okay. This one came in a while ago, and it's again on this same line.
I don't know, but maybe Sandy can answer that.
Sandy, did you have any thoughts?
Laura, did you want to add something? I saw you unmuted. I don't want to butt in. You're good. All right. I was going to say, I think you do that. If I was a manager and I had a black person and I wanted to make sure they felt included, I would have, and it sounds like maybe this is a manager asking this question. So I would hope that you have created a team that you felt comfortable talking to them about everything. And to me, that's the number one thing you want to do, so that just ask them, but I mean, in a polite way, in the proper way. And I know sometimes we worry about that right now, which is why, as Velva was saying, you've had this team that already feels comfortable. And it sounds like you must be concerned about making this person comfortable and making sure this person feels included. Well, my advice to be, obviously you care, that let them know that you care. And that's why you're asking this question. And that's all that really matters, is you care. And you may mess up. You may not say the words exactly right, because we're all worried about that right now. But letting that person know that you care, and that is why you're asking this question, and that you want to make things better, and hopefully that'll work for you. But remember, I have rose-colored glasses, so
Well, it's got to be a culture that is all inclusive anyway, and you wouldn't have to have a one-on-one conversation if that culture is already established.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there may be something missing in that culture.
Right. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. We're going to move over and have a couple of conversations about mental health, Laura. The governor is having a press conference as we speak to talk about what's happening. And of course, I have a mole watching it since I couldn't watch it. And they've let me know that he has said we're going to remain in phase 2 for 5 more weeks. And so, Laura, I do not like this isolation. I don't like being separated from my friends. I'm not necessarily a shopper, but I do like to go out to eat. And so what can we do, Laura, to help the anxiety that might come with having to live in a way right now, whether it's because we want to be around people or because we're afraid of the virus. And I have that fear too, along with the desire to get out of my house. I have the desire to keep myself and my aging parents safe. So what can we do to not let that anxiety get to us, or to address the anxiety when we do find it?
Yeah, so some of this may come across as just common sense, but we have to keep taking care of ourselves. We have to stay physically active. We have to keep building these supports that we already have in our lives, find ways to reach out to the people we love that we might not be able to see, our elderly loved ones, or those that are ill who need more support than ever, but we can't physically give it to them by our presence. So find creative ways to build those relationships and keep in touch with people and community organizations that have been supports for you. I've kept my membership with the YMCA. I can't go there to work out, but I'm still engaged with them in different ways. At church, we're doing Zoom and staying in touch with one another. We have to keep those relationships going. And one of the most important things to know is that most of us who really are getting worn down in this situation, it's happening because of some of our better qualities. We want to be helping to take care of other people. We want to be socializing and being there for our friends, and we feel guilty that we can't. And we have to really address some of those emotions individually too and recognize them about ourselves. Reach out for help, as you know, many of us have probably already done. There are, like I said, ample and maybe even more opportunities for mental health care right now. Because of COVID-19, it might be even easier to access care with telepsychiatry services in a way. So I think those are just some of the most important things. And we also have to know that many times we as women don't take care of ourselves as we should. We're looking for other ways to take care of others. So we need to check on other people and have specific questions to ask our friends, our colleagues. How have you found ways to stay connected? How are you taking care of yourselves? What are you going to do when all this is over? Focus on safety. Focus on how are you keeping yourself calm? What ways do you use to calm your own anxiety? And that way you can get ideas from your colleagues, from your friends, and also find out how they're doing. If they don't have these supports or these resources, you know, it'll tell you some things about how they're really doing. And go ahead and get 2 resources in your pocket to reach out when things get bad. Go ahead and know what number are you going to call when you really need help, or what number are you going to give to your friend when they reach out and say, things are in trouble, or I'm in trouble. Have 2 resources in your back pocket would be what I'd say, so that you feel prepared for yourself and for the people you care about.
Super. Sandy or Belva, anything you would add on that question?
I think she did a great job.
She did.
I can tell you, if you get me on the phone, I'll talk to you forever, because I'm talking to people so bad.
Sandy loves to help people. So, Sandy, let's stay with you for a moment. Then this next question, have you ever lost trust with a company you worked for? You had high hopes for something, whether it be a bonus or a raise or a promotion, and it didn't happen, or something bad happened even, and now you feel kind of lost. So it sounds like somebody might be looking for a little help there, Sandy.
I had a weird situation one time where I remember when I got hired on this job, the very first meeting we had, the boss was sitting there talking about negotiating and how you should negotiate. And he actually mentioned negotiating salary. And I had moved from one town to another town and had not really done my research to know what the salary range would be. Actually, at the time, I don't even know how you would. This was in the Stone Ages. So I thought when we had that meeting, I'm like, he's talking about negotiating salary. He just hired me. This is weird. But I let it go. And then a little while later, another company bought my company, and they literally gave me a raise because I was underpaid as a female. And the new company will study and saw it. And the whole time I remember thinking, this guy who was my supervisor, he was thinking, cha-ching, I got her cheap, And I really lost a lot of respect for that guy. And I loved him. I just loved him so much, other than I felt like. So if you know me, I'll have hard conversations with you. I will tell you all the time, nobody made me right, but my mom and daddy made me vocal. So I will tell you what I think, and nobody made me right. And I truly do believe that. So I did have a conversation with him. And I said, I'm not going to say his real name. I'm going to say, Joe, he wasn't my supervisor anymore when the raise came in. Another guy was. And I just said, we were at a bar one night, and I said, I know what you did. And he was like, I regret that. I regret doing that. That was wrong. But it is, but you didn't negotiate with me. And he was right. I didn't. But I did have that hard conversation with him. Of course, I had a beer or two, and that maybe isn't the best way to do it. But I would say, if you feel like something like that's happened to you, obviously, if he's still your boss, you got to be very careful about the way you have this conversation. But I am a firm believer in going head on, having conversations, but trying to be very respectful about the way that you have the conversation. I'm not sure that answered your question. And I keep saying the same thing. I guess I need to get a little more creative in the way I say stuff. But talking to this person about whatever wronged you in a respectful, polite way. And usually when I'm doing that, I tell people, this is how I felt. it may not be the way you meant it, but this is how you made me feel. It's not what you say, it's what I hear. So this is what I heard. And that gives them the out. That gives them, oh, I didn't mean it that way or whatever. So if you find that way to have that conversation where you give them that out, it's a much easier conversation. When I say go head on, I guess I need to tell you, I go head on, but I'm always, in a way that gives them that out. So let them know that this is what you understand. This is what you heard, that maybe not what you said, but this is what I heard. I don't know.
No, I think so. Go ahead,
And
Velva.
I would like to just kind of pick back a little bit of what Sandy's saying. Don't mischaracterize. Don't let people mischaracterize you, or you mischaracterize other people. Don't assume anything. Like Sandy says, ask them, give them that way out to say, oh no, I meant it that way, or yes, I didn't mean it that way. And then I want to talk about free. Men have always been brave enough to ask for what they want. And women are going to start doing the same thing. If you know you cannot work for $70,000 less, don't take less than $70,000. Go in and say, this is what I'm worth. Because once you settle for anything less, you're saying, and I think I've heard one of the other panelists, I don't know if it was Sandy or Laura, you're saying, I'm selling myself cheap, or I'm not worth that $70,000 that I wanted. And just be very professional about it. And talk to them. And then if they say, oh no, negotiate. Get as closest to 70 as you can get. It might be 69,999, but whatever. Just negotiate.
Yeah, that's great. That male mentor that I mentioned earlier is one who has said to me, no, you should not accept this. You go back. And so I completely agree with that. So we're going to step back in. We've got a leader in the community who's in our audience today, who's being asked to be more vocal about their opinion with regard to race in today's world. But this leader doesn't feel comfortable and doesn't want to be in the midst of controversy or debate, but her leadership is being questioned because she's not speaking up. Can you offer some suggestions, any of the three of you, of how this particular community leader might gain the strength and the ability to speak out and speak up, and so that leadership doesn't continue to be questioned? Melba, I think you're probably a good one to start with this one.
Well, my thing is, don't let anyone determine your character. If that's not who you are, if that's not what you believe, then you need to stand up for what you believe. Whatever. Stand up for what you believe, because at the end of the day, you're still the person that you want to be. You've got to live with yourself. You got to go home with yourself, not these other people, the people that voted for you, or the people that promoted you in this position. Be yourself and stand up for what you believe in.
It's such a crazy time nowadays. People, back in the olden days, you could have an opinion and somebody could disagree with you, and that was okay. And it really needs to be that way again. It is okay if I don't agree with you. And it's unfortunate that you're having to deal with this right now, but it is the reality that we're living in. And hopefully, rose-colored glasses again, we go back to where, it is okay to disagree. I think there's books written about that, but it really is okay. I mean, a perfect example, and I know that is, my sister and I are very different, and we get along great. I mean, but we are so polar opposite on almost everything that we believe in, but we choose to respect the fact that we don't meet in the middle, or we don't agree on everything. So I would second what Velva said. Another idea would be, whenever you're going to come out with something, bounce it off somebody, bounce it off to somebody's. If it's about race, bounce it off a black woman or a black man that you respect, and a white man, and say, this is what I want to say. What are you hearing? What we just said a little while ago. It's not necessarily what you say, it's what they hear. And people are going to hear with the baggage that they bring with them to the table. But if you practice, or you work with somebody that you respect and tell them what you want to say. But you, like Velva said, you need to be you. In this day and time, could it make you not get reelected? It's horrible, but yes, you can. Yes, it can. But be true to yourself. Thank you.
That's very good advice. I think that all the time personally, that being yourself is the most important. It's hard to keep up with who you're pretending to be if you're not yourself. And at some point you get caught. It looks like Megan's put another poll up. Oh, no, she's sharing results. Oh, this is great. So we'll take a pause for a moment, let our panelists maybe take a sip of their water or their wine, and I'll share these results. I'm assuming you guys can see them, but I'm not sure given that it's webinar format. But the first question, how comfortable are you asking your family and friends about race issues? It looks like 52% of you are comfortable. That's great. And then 21% are very comfortable. So that's a good 73% of you are comfortable, and that is good. How comfortable are you discussing race with friends or coworkers who are of a different race than you? And so a little bit fewer. That comfortable. Not surprising. Encourage you to keep working on that as appropriate for you, and again, as you are yourself. So being yourself. Thank you so much, ladies, for that. This next question sort of dovetails nicely. I have difficulty talking about myself and all the things that I actually do. And Sandy, you kind of touched on it. I think Velva has touched on it later in the program. But what are some suggestions to how to talk about yourself and not sound like you're gloating or being braggadocious in that? Sandy, come on.
I don't know. I think you, and maybe I always sound braggadocious, I hope not, but maybe I think the best way to do that is, to be humble and I mean, I do think I'm good at what I do, but I also know I'm bad at a lot of other stuff, so I'm, I also know that my kids tell me that I have a mean voice. I don't mean to have a mean voice, but surrounding yourself with people that will tell you what the truth about yourself. So, but in talking to your boss, which I think most everybody's kind of what we're talking about here, bringing to the table what you have done. I think Natalie brought that one up. What are your wins? And mentioning that, what are you doing right now? And that's not bragging. That's just the truth. I mean, obviously you can't ask for a big raise if you haven't at least been somewhat successful. So I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. The young lady that I was dealing with, one of my Wilmington mentors, she, her job after COVID changed drastically, like a lot of people's. And what she did, she really couldn't do anymore. So she had to go do something different. So I said, what a great time for you to be having your review. What you did, you couldn't even do it. But instead of sitting on your laurels, you and another person went and figured out something else to do to make money for your company. So I guess if you're talking about what you're successful at, you're not bragging, and you just say it in a way that's not braggy. You're just, this is what I did, and it's the facts and just the facts. So I don't know if that helps. So.
I think so. My team at the chamber, obviously, 50% of our revenue comes from in-person events historically, and that team got together in mid-April and started coming up with creative ways to bring in revenue, to collect revenue that was owed the chamber. They are phenomenal. I'm so proud of them, and I brag about them all the time. So I hope that they are also patting themselves on the back and telling board members and other chamber members the things that they are doing, because I want you all in the community to feel the value that you have in your chamber staff team, because they have stepped up in a big way. In fact, we were joking before we came live that Megan's now a TV producer. So she was our marketing and communications vice president, running all our newsletters. She's still doing all of those things, but she's now also a TV producer for this webinar in particular. So Sandy, you talked about in that answer, you mentioned the boss, and here's a follow-up sort of question to that. Can you talk about managing up? What is an effective way, this is a tough one, to approach giving constructive feedback to your boss? And I want my team to listen to this, because I'm a lifelong avid learner. In Strength Finders, my two of my top 5 strengths are learning. So I want to learn all I can, and self-awareness. And so I want to know, what is it about me that isn't good? And I also have this need to be perfect, which is terrible and creates all kinds of other issues, but we won't go there today. But I really do want to know. And so I want the people who work for me to have the tools to give constructive feedback to me. And so if any of you have any suggestions, I try to use the language and to create a culture that sends that message, but I am still the boss. And so how can one of the people on my team feel comfortable offering me constructive feedback?
I would like to say, Natalie, I think if you have a team environment, it's going to come very natural for them to be able to provide you that feedback. I know here I have every 2 weeks we have a team meeting, and we start off our meetings with a very question to ponder, just to kind of break the ice, get everybody comfortable. And to break the ice could be something like, what did you do this past weekend since we're in phase 2 of COVID? And everybody will go around the room, and then we'll talk about a particular event that we wanted to break down or assess or to be able to massage. And then I will just kind of put myself into place and say, I was in charge of this. What could I have done better, or how could I have done it in a better way? So I'm kind of opening up the door for them to share their information about me. Now, if it's a one-on-one situation where there is something I have maybe said or done something wrong with an employee, then when we're talking one-on-one, I also open up the door for them to share what I could have done differently.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
So as a leader, it's really nice for me to hear when people tell me what helped. So I think most of us agree that we don't get enough feedback as employees or as leaders. And so I try to give feedback, positive or constructive, a little more often than I used to. So as employees, I think we need to tell folks, this was really helpful when you sent that email out, or this project really made a difference in what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. And that kind of feedback can be really helpful. And then when you're trying to discuss something that didn't go so well, I think it's just, as Sandy mentioned earlier, it's important to talk about maybe how you felt or how it impacted you. It was really hard when you asked us to do this way. And what we found is maybe we could have done it easier this way, and discuss exactly what made things difficult. And then as leaders, we have to be careful how we respond when we get feedback. I think that affects whether or not people are going to do it again and tell us exactly how things did go. So that's just something to be cognizant about.
I was going to say, to back up what Laura was saying, she kind of said exactly what I was thinking, that, and I hope my boss isn't on here, but your boss is kind of like your kid. So when you have a boss, constructive criticism, rewarding your boss for the good things that he does steers him to continue to work that way, which is what Laura said. And
sure, that positive reinforcement.
So with your boss, when he's doing stuff the way you think he should do it, then you say, oh, wow, that was great. Wow, I love that. Exactly what Laura said. So the way I always look at it is my boss is kind of like my child. And if I respect my boss, please know that I wasn't meaning that I don't. I respect my kids. But if you work with your boss the same way you worked with your children, as far as being constructive and continuing to praise what's good, and in a good way, talk about what's bad, like Laura said, then that's the way to do it. And 100%, Laura, if you tell your boss something and you get a really bad result from that, obviously that boss is not going to be getting too much constructive or destructive opinion.
But I think also the boss, when they receive the positive reinforcement and feedback, then when there might be something less positive, they'll be more open to receiving it because they trust that you do have positive intentions around sharing that feedback. So that's how I've managed up bosses in the past, certainly. So we're back to the suggestion about speaking up and bragging on yourself in a humble way. Someone's asked the question, if you keep track of your accomplishments, and if so, how do you do that? How do you keep track? Do you have a formula then for how you use the things you've accomplished?
Mm-hmm.
I certainly would say that if you don't already have a performance management plan with your boss, and I'm saying this while under COVID, ours have fallen apart with my staff team, but they're on the list to get done, as many other things are on the list. But if you don't have a performance management plan with your boss that has goals and metrics that you need to meet throughout the year, that's a first step, because all of us want to know what's expected, and then we want to hit those targets or exceed them, and then you've got a record. That's the easiest way to keep a record, because it's a record you and your boss or manager agree to on the front end. And beyond that, I keep a list of things that I do that are not on because I do have a performance management plan with my boss, the board of directors at the chamber, but I still keep a list separate and apart that are things that don't speak to the things on that agreed upon list, because if for some reason I slip on one of those, I want to be sure they knew I knocked it out of the park on some other things. Does anybody else have any systems you might share?
And I would like to say, Natalie, your performance appraisal, when your performance assessment is done annually or every 6 months, those things that hit high on the list with your boss or your bosses, Natalie, in your case or my case, those are things that you put on your list as accomplishments. And then when you go on to another career, or if you want to show off the things that you excel in, you've got that list. You've got that list to reflect back to. And if your boss doesn't have goals set for you, it's hard to measure how you're doing. So if they don't have it, I used to have a supervisor that would not do a performance appraisal. He would say, Velva, do your own. I hated that.
Mm-hmm.
I hated it, because it always feel good when somebody else recognizes what you do. I know what I do, and I know how well I do it. But if someone else is telling me that I've done an amazing job in an area, it makes me feel good, and it gives me that encouragement, and that boosts my self-esteem to do even better.
That's great. Anybody else? So now we've got our talking about money poll. So if you guys in the audience would answer that, we'll share results a little bit later. Thank you, Megan, for doing that behind the curtain. So let's see, here we go. I volunteer on committees at work and in the community. She says, I often find women are asked to do the heavy lifting. And she was once, she says, terribly disappointed when pressure was put on her by the other two women as the men looked on to get something done. Do you have any thoughts about when you're working in teams and the expectation is that you as the woman will do the harder things?
I'd tell them to get off your butt and help me do this thing personally, but I'm not sure if that's the right answer to that.
So I have a funny story to this point. Early in my career, I was in my early 20s and worked at a law firm and reported to this amazingly smart man who had a chemistry degree from NC State and then a Harvard law degree, like over the top smart and deserved, right? You know, in my opinion, because of all of his accomplishments at that point, deserved to sit back and let everybody else do the menial tasks. We were in a meeting and I was the only female in the circle of all white men, of course. Gosh, this was a long, long time ago. And one of the other men said, "Hey, Natalie, can you go make some copies?" And he handed me a piece of paper. My boss took the piece of paper and said, "I'll take care of it. I'll be right back." I could still kiss him when I see him because that wasn't the first time or wasn't the last time. It was the first time, and it knocked me off my feet, but it made me so proud to have him for my boss and really, really set for me the stage of expectations I should have for people of all types, but right, this recognition that just because I was low man on the totem pole from an age and a position perspective, but he wasn't going to let that guy take advantage of me that way, and he stood up for me. It was pretty cool. Any other thoughts?
Well, and if he didn't stand up for you, then you probably, in a nicer way than I just said, and Laura and Velva are much nicer people, so they probably talk better about this. But there is a nice way to say, "Hey, come help me." So, but
Yeah.
I think Velva and Laura can probably talk better about that than me.
Any thoughts, ladies?
I think Natalie, that you kind of gave a great example of that. Yeah.
Well, and except that, so in my case, my boss, I didn't get to do it. I think that as I've thought about that experience and repeated that story a number of times, I think that if I were in the situation and I was the woman being asked to do things that nobody else was being asked to do, I would probably say, I'll be happy to do one of those things. And I hope that you'll take care of the other, and let's spread this workload out. I mean, that's a respectful way to say, look, people, don't put it all on my plate. And you should do that. If the four of us were in a meeting talking about who was going to walk away, one of us shouldn't have to walk away with more of the work than anyone else. So, yeah, let's see what else we have. Wow, this is, okay, my mother has always been successful, but now finds herself in a predicament upon retirement. Her savings are drained due to sickness and siblings, etc. She's relatively successful, the person asking this question, and feels like the burden will fall on her. She says she's being selfish. I say she's not. But she wants to know, how does she compassionately approach this topic with her mother and her siblings without jeopardizing their relationship and her own family's future? I don't think she's being selfish at all. I think she's being realistic that you've worked hard. I don't know who you are, but you have worked hard to be able to take care of your family, and you should not feel bad about that. Now, as a child of aging parents, I'm carrying some responsibility now too. My sisters and I have figured out how to have those conversations. I'll be honest, I have two stepsisters, and we haven't figured out how to have the conversations across the step siblings, and we're struggling a little bit there and trying to apply what we've learned as birth sisters to try to apply and be better. Dr. Laura, do you have any thoughts for, and then Sandy, of course, with the money management, and I know you've taught seniors how to deal with money issues late in life. I wonder if either of you might have some responses for this person.
I think this is hard because each situation is different, and you do have to make sure that you take care of yourself and have someone, a neutral party, to bounce these emotions and feelings off of and to process them with. I don't want to undermine psychotherapy. It's not a bouncing off feelings per se, but have a neutral party to talk through this process with, and probably it may come that you want a financial advisor and someone to really weigh all of the perspectives. But yeah, this is hard. There's so many feelings. There's a lot of guilt in that situation, and a lot of shame, and that's hard. But also, you have to pay attention to what you've done for yourself, and you've got to take care of your immediate family. It's hard. I'll defer over to Sandy. Yeah.
Well, this isn't going to help you, but maybe this will help other people. When you're young, there's a lot of conversations you really need to have. And one of them is a conversation with your parents about, are you going to be their retirement and their caretaker, and what does that look like? And your siblings, are they going to help with what you're doing with your parent and your caretaker? Luckily, there's 5 girls in my family, and we've somewhat had this conversation about my single, my mother. But having those conversations, so when you talk about money conversations that you need to have, or caring conversations that you need to have, and that's a hard one to have with your parents, and sometimes things change, but having those money conversations with your parents, with your siblings about what are we going to do, how are we going to handle this early, makes it much better. Now, that doesn't help you at all, and I'm sorry, but you do need to have those hard conversations. You just have to have them. And when I say money, I also mean caring for and money, who's going to take care of, who's going to help pay for. And what Laura just said, you need to have a conversation with a professional, because you may not know how to handle your mother's affairs or what you need to do to be able to handle it at a later date. So whenever you're ready to talk about it, I thought that funny, but the results on that one poll are so completely different than every other poll. When people talk about being comfortable talking about money, our group of people sounded like they were good with it. So I can't wait to talk about that, because every poll I've ever read in banking, et cetera, was not reflective of what this poll looks like. I want to see all the people in this call. That's crazy.
Let's see, Megan, can you put the money results up for us? I thought that I saw the results on race. Did we see the results on money already? I'm not sure if we have.
Maybe
The money screen should still be up. Are you not able to see it?
I don't see it, Megan. I'm sorry. Let me see. Polls. If I click on that. There they are. I had put them down. So, wow, that is very comfortable and comfortable. 79%. Wow. We must have a pretty astute audience today. And then the sibling one, it's lower. And that certainly, and parents or siblings. Yeah, that's certainly, I think that attests to the question. Which is really so clearly with your spouse. Good. Keep doing that. That's so important. Sandy and others have shared some resources with us that we will send out to all of the participants at the end of, probably not today, but at some point before the end of the week, we'll send out some resources. And one was an article from one of my favorite Easy Read magazines, Real Simple. I love that magazine. Great little tips. And so they're like bite-sized reads. And I love that about that magazine. But this one is what conversations, I think is 8 conversations you should have about money. And it did touch on the aging parents and their future care. So I encourage you to click on that link when you see that. We are edging towards 5 o'clock, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to see if any of our panelists have anything they want to add that hasn't come up yet in any of our questions.
Natalie, I would like to add one thing to the sibling that's having the issue with the aging parent. And I don't know if Sandy or Dr. Laura mentioned this, but my thing, I came from a big family, a very large family. I'm the 10th child. And as you heard, I took care of an aging mother. However, finances wasn't the issue for us, thank God. It was just the time and the commitment of doing so. But I would suggest that you would bring your siblings together. They may not even be aware of what you're going through, how you're feeling at the time, or how your mother's feeling. So if you bring them together to a family meeting and just say, this is the situation we face, who has suggestions? And you never know, you might get a perfect answer.
That's great. Dr. Picaldo, I just found one, and I called you by your official name because this one really is a medical doctor question. As a new business owner, I'm learning to manage my male employees and navigate the business community. This can produce a lot of anxiety at times throughout the day. What advice can you give to both manage anxiety without medication and feel more comfortable with my role as a business owner? And maybe Sandy, we might need you to weigh in on the second half of that question. But I do think that people are looking for ways to manage all kinds of health concerns without medication. So, Dr. Laura?
Sure. So there are a lot of different skills to manage anxiety in the moment without medication. One of the most you're going to hear most frequently is mindfulness, and then just staying in the moment. Don't try to reground yourself and focus on what you feel, what you hear, what you see in that moment, to ground yourself back into that moment. And this is the opportunity where I think it would really benefit folks to have engagement with a psychotherapist for at least briefly to learn these skills for mindfulness. There are also some really wonderful apps that are available. The hospital released some for us even to help us work through anxiety and stress related to COVID. Sandbello is one, and I can provide some others at the end of the call. But take a break, take a walk, get some physical activity, eat a healthy snack, regroup, and make a phone call to a mentor. these are all kinds of different strategies to manage in the moment. But
Sandy, anything you would add?
And I would, well, I think Laura, can y'all hear me? Because I'm not there. I think Laura hit it right on the head. But I would tell you, as far as a business owner, I find that by getting a small group of like-minded business owners, like an alternative board type thing, where they're not competitors, but maybe they're similar size, and bouncing ideas off of them, whether you're doing it in person or just ideas, but other people that have walked the walk. That, I mean, if somebody's already invented the wheel, don't reinvent the wheel. That's my motto. And so getting with people that are like-minded like you and getting them and asking them, what did you do with this? What did you do? And getting their advice. You maybe don't want to go to your competitor because maybe he won't tell you the right thing, but finding people that are in business would be what I would say. And I will tell you, during COVID, I'm ADD. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I'm very ADD. So this has been very difficult for me, but I did start yoga, and I love it. I mean, I did it on the TV, and now there's a little small group where we socially distance and we're people that work together all the time anyway. But it really does what Laura said, just being in that moment. You didn't realize how much you were not in that moment until you start doing something like that.
Those are great tools. And we will, as I said, we will send out some tools and some suggestions post-event for you all. And gosh, well, in some ways, I feel like we've been sitting here for an hour and a half, but in other ways, I feel like we've got so much more to talk about. And I do hope that those of you who have joined us today will find places and people where you can continue this conversation or these conversations. The conversations about how to have them and how to manage them, but then also the conversations themselves, because they are all important. They're not the only important questions and conversations to ask and to have, but they are important. And know that you have a community of folks who are interested in having them. And certainly our panelists and I would be willing to engage further. If any of you have that interest, just let us know at the Chamber and we can help connect you to our panelists. So again, to thank our panelists today, Velva Jenkins, the President and CEO of the YWCA, Dr. Laura Picaldo, who is with New Hanover Regional Medical Center and head of the psychiatry department, and then Sandy Spears, who is market banker here in the Wilmington area for SunTrust, now Truist Bank. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd also like to thank again our sponsors, First National Bank, our presenting sponsor, and Spence Broadhurst. Thank you for being with us earlier in the event. The Inspiration Lab, and don't forget, ladies, check into the resources that the Inspiration Lab provides. GE Aviation, they're always good to empower groups of their employees, including women. Every year they send a good group of women to this event. The Greater Wilmington Business Journal, and remember, Wilma is a resource for women business people. And then Star News Media also is our sponsor. I also like to thank those who contributed the coupons and the gifts from our local spas and other services that women might access that are in your gift bags. And please enjoy, thanks to our sponsors, the wine and the popcorn and the cookies that you found in your gift bags. If you haven't picked your gift bag up, we will be in the office tomorrow. You're welcome to swing by and pick those up tomorrow. I'm not sure about the Friday schedule yet, but we'll let you know if you haven't picked yours up when you can come. As you heard, there are perishable items in those gift bags. So if you don't pick them up by tomorrow, you won't want to chew the popcorn. It'll be like chewing gum instead of crunchy popcorn. But again, I just want to thank my team. The staff team came together in a big way. This really was a production, and everyone stepped up and is still behind the scenes, behind the curtain, helping make sure that this was run smoothly. We look forward to any feedback, constructive or otherwise, about this event, because it looks like at least 5 more weeks. We're going to continue to be in phase 2. Who knows what the rest of this calendar year looks like, but we want to continue to bring you content in ways that's enjoyable. So please let us know. And again, thank you all for being with us, and have a great rest of the week.